Alright, so the NFL Draft is now over. My video is coming out a little bit later because I wanted to have a chance to kind of research some of our guys that we got and really kind of form my opinion based off of that. I wanted a little bit of time for it to sink in. Plus, I had a lot of other stuff going on. But all in all, I thought we had a really good draft. I try to come away from drafts positive because I don't know what we're gonna get out of the players. We could get a future Hall of Famer. We can get a future draft busts. You know, it happens. There are no slam dunks. So, even when Andrew Luck was coming out of the drafts, there was no guarantee that he was going to be great, even though everybody assumed he was going to be great, and he did turn out fine. But there's always no guarantee. There'd be some freak injury that happens before training camp, ruins their career. God forbid. Obviously, so nothing is a slam dunk, so I normally try to come out positive from it anyway, because I don't want to end up ragging on them for picking a guy who ends up becoming a future Hall of Famer or whatever. You just never know. But so we'll start at the top with my little analysis. Laramie Tunsil. Oh, I also want to say that I'm not going to discuss every single draft pick, because a lot of the dudes, especially later on in the draft, probably aren't even going to make the roster. Or if they do make the roster, they probably aren't going to have a huge role. So I'm going to kind of focus more on the guys that we took in the first about 4 rounds or so. I'll cover a couple of the guys, like Brandon Doughty. I want to talk about him a little bit. But we'll start at the top. Obviously, first round pick, 13th overall, Laramie Tunsil. He fell a little bit because of the video that was posted about him a couple days prior to the draft, which he said was actually indeed him, and it happened a couple years ago. And he doesn't have a drug problem or anything like that. All I have to go off of is his word. And he's never failed a drug test, so I don't necessarily see a reason to not trust the kid. So we'll see what happens. But I have faith in him. And he could become possibly one of the steals of the draft. I mean, even though falling to 13th, he still was in the upper half of the draft. So, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call it a steal. But since considering how high he was on people's boards, and since he was probably considered the best player, if not maybe lineman in the draft, for sure. So then the next pick ended up being Xavier Howard, who was the corner out of Baylor. We traded a couple picks away to get up there to get him. We traded up. I think there was 3 or 4 more picks ahead of us, and we traded up. The Bucks and the Giants were supposed to pick. They both need corner help, even though they drafted a corner in the first round. If you have any kind of uncertainty that your guy is not going to be there, I have no problem with trading up. And again, like I said earlier too, I can't necessarily bitch and complain about it, because if this dude becomes great, then trading away those 2 picks, it's worth it to me. So, but Xavier Howard, cornerback out of Baylor, a lot of people were kind of wondering why we drafted him anyway, because there were guys that were supposedly better, which is probably true, but we drafted him because he more fits our scheme, I think. He's also 6'1". He can cover bigger guys. I'm not saying size generally always matters, because we know Brent Grimes is like 5'10", 5'9", something like that, and he can cover dudes that are taller than him. So that's not necessarily an issue per se, size, but it is nice to have a guy with big size. He's physical, fits our scheme, like I said, and he has really high potential. He does get a lot of pass interference calls, which is an issue. He does have a little bit of problem with his technique, but that's stuff that's coachable. That's stuff that's fixable. And again, I think this was purely like a scheme kind of move, which I am completely okay with, because in one of my other videos I talked about the New England Patriots, why they're so successful, because they just pull in players that fit their scheme. That's why when players leave, they're not very successful outside of New England, because they fit New England's scheme. They fit what New England likes to do. So if that's what we're doing, I'm completely on board with that. Picking people that fit our scheme, that are coachable, and things like that. I think Xavier Howard is a great pick. The only thing I don't like is that he's a corner, and the reason I say that is because corners seem to always have to take time to grow and develop. A lot of guys kind of can come in and get it immediately, like Andrew Luck kind of came in and was kind of great right off the bat. He still had some issues, but he was kind of great off the bat. With corners, it's completely different. Like, rookie corners just constantly get burned. I'm not sure, maybe other than Patrick Peterson, that I heard of a corner that was just, like, really successful right off the bat. So obviously there's gonna be some growing pains, but I don't think he's gonna be expected to start immediately anyway because of Byron Maxwell and things like that. But I still think down the road he will be a great player for us. Next player that we got was Leonte Carew, and we also traded a couple picks away for that. I think we traded away 3 picks for him, which a lot of people were really mad about. And again, I'm not thrilled with trading away draft picks for other guys because you can bring in other people, but again, I also can't complain because if this guy becomes great, like I said before, it's worth it. Leonte Carew, I was kind of watching some of his highlights, and obviously highlights don't tell the whole story, but to me, he reminded me a lot of Jarvis Landry. And it would be really awesome if we had 2 Jarvis Landry guys on our team. The kid plays big. That's probably kind of the wrong wording. He's a big time player, I guess is what I was trying to say. He's, again, just like Jarvis Landry, he's agile, he's quick. Is really quick with like juke moves and things like that. He's very elusive, and I think he can develop into a really, really good player for us. The next guy that we got was Kenyon Drake, or I think I said his name right, Kenyon Drake, something like that. He's a running back out of Alabama. I think he actually used to start for them, and then injuries, he got injury plagued, and ultimately I think that was how he lost his job. Again, I'm not completely sure. I don't watch Alabama games, but I believe he was the starter before Derrick Henry, and then injuries kind of tore him apart. The guy's quick. The guy's very fast. If he can stay healthy, I think he can be a very, very solid player for us. I still think Jay Ajayi is going to be our starter. But Kenyon Drake kind of adds another dynamic. He kind of adds that speed that Lamar Miller had and things like that. So we'll have kind of like a nice 1-2 punch because I think Jay Ajayi is a little bit more physical. And then you can bring in Kenyon Drake to be your shifty guy, which I completely agree with. He can be a return man as well. But probably the pick I'm most excited to see is the other kid that we got, which was I'm sorry, I forgot his first name. I think his last name is Grant. Yeah, Jakeem Grant, the wide receiver out of Texas Tech. Now, the biggest issue with him that everybody keeps talking about is that he's only like 5'7", 5'6", or 5'7", something like that. It might not even be that. I think during the draft they showed it. I think he was like 5'5". To me, I don't necessarily look at height because height doesn't necessarily always tell the story. Barry Sanders, in my opinion, is the greatest running back ever, and he was like 5'9". Maurice Jones-Drew was like 5'9". He was a great player. Who else? Darren Sproles. I think Darren Sproles was like 5'7", and he was a great player. So size to me doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot. If he were to come in, I don't think he would be more than a slot guy just because of his height. I think he'd be a nice return man as well. And so for me, those are the picks that I am most excited about, are those 4. The other guys we got, we ended up getting a tight end, a safety, and then somebody else that we got was Brandon Doughty, who we drafted in the 7th round. He was a quarterback, and you can say what you want because he comes from a smaller school, but the guy's really accurate. He had a 72% completion percentage, threw for over 5,000 yards, and 48 touchdowns to just 9 interceptions. Which is really good, in my opinion. Even though he came from a smaller school, he didn't play big competition or anything like that, but I still think that he had a very successful college career. And he'll develop under us, but I don't think he'll start for us. Let's hope he doesn't have to start for us because Ryan Tannehill doesn't do well or something like that, or goes down with an injury or whatever. So I hope he doesn't have to start for us, but If he does, then I hope that he'll be ready. So anyway, that is my analysis on our draft. Again, I thought it was very positive. I'm really looking forward to it. I'm probably not gonna make another video again for a while because there's just not gonna be a lot going on. Players are gonna start going on vacations now and things like that. So there's not gonna be a whole lot of talk. Maybe once training camp, or well, I mean, again, unless something big comes up, then I'll talk about it. But maybe possibly when training camp starts up. But even training camp, not a lot happens. Again, it would have to be fairly big. I might start covering it. Might start covering training camp weekly, or whatever. But I'll definitely cover the preseason games and all that. So until then, I'll see y'all later. Hope you liked the video, and see you whenever. I would also like to add, too, that I will also be talking about the Lions a little bit in some of my other videos, too. My father is a huge Lions fan, so they're like my second team. I follow them almost as much as I follow the Dolphins as well. Obviously, I won't talk about them as much as I talk about the Dolphins, but I'll definitely throw some of that in there. I'm also planning on doing like some other like random types of videos as well. Like I'm going to go see Civil War on this Thursday, so I might have a couple videos on that. Obviously not of the actual movie itself, but of me going there and hanging out and things like that. So be on the lookout for those, and I'll see you guys next time.